Hello, I'm Neil Quigley and welcome to the latest episode of my Blogcast. I hope you're well and you've had a good couple of weeks. I met my mate Steve on our very first day at primary school when we were both 4 years old. We sat next to each other on that first day and we've been great friends ever since. He, his wife and his children live up on the North Wales English border, so we don't see them as often as we'd like to. Last time, my girlfriend Linda and I went up to see them. They've got a great house right in the hills in the countryside with a stream pretty much at the bottom of their lane. It's so peaceful, it's so beautiful, and they've got such a nice piece of decking where you can sit and have your morning cup of tea and just look out onto nature. While we were there, we were talking, and it turned out their daughter had never actually been for a day out in London. So we said, why don't you come down, spend the weekend with us, we'll go into London and we'll see a show. It'll be a great experience for their daughter and it'll be nice for all of us to catch up and have a good time. And we finally got round to doing this recently. Luckily, Linda has a couple of spare rooms at her house, so they came down on the Friday night. By the time they got there, it was probably about 9:45, so we just had a bit of a catch-up, had some drinks, may have had some nibbles. The plan was to try and get to bed as early as possible because we knew we had a busy day on the Saturday. However, because we'd not seen each other for a while, we did stay up later than we planned. I think it was gone midnight by the time we got to sleep. Obviously, we wanted to make the most of the one full day in London, so we got up at a reasonable time, got breakfast, got ourselves ready, and managed to get ourselves on a train to London at about 10:30, arriving at 11. Now, Linda had very kindly offered to plan the route for our tour. I did have a bit of input, but it was all her route, all her plan of what we did. We decided to get the tube and head out to the London Bridge area and then start our way back down the south bank of the Thames. It was the very first time my friend's daughter had been on a tube. And you know, when you take the London Underground all the time, you don't necessarily realise how rickety and how noisy it can be. However, when you're a young girl with sensitive hearing who's experiencing this for the first time, she did find it a little bit difficult and she was a bit upset by the initial journey, which was such a shame because she was so excited about the day, bouncing on the overground train journey in, and I think that tube journey just knocked her confidence very slightly, although thankfully only for a very short time. The first stop on the tour was Borough Market. As you may have gathered, if you're a regular listener, my girlfriend Linda is a big foodie. She likes nice food and she's a great cook as well. And Borough Market, I mean, it's the place to go for that in London, really. We had a good look round there and the produce just looks and smells fantastic. And the place, of course, is always rammed with people. Within about 2 minutes of being there, my friend's daughter had already convinced her parents to buy her a nice, sweet jam tart treat, which looked amazing. Now, I think part of the reason we started there was my girlfriend is a massive fan of bread. There is a bakery there called Bread Ahead, which she claims is possibly the best in the UK. So we had to go there. The initial plan, she said, was just to show us their donuts, which are huge and renowned pretty much all over the country, as I understand it. So we went to their stall at the market, firstly to have a look at these donuts. While we were there, they spotted these French loaves of bread, which had olives, cheese and other things in them that were looking very, very popular, and they were just flying off the stall. So after looking at the breadsticks, they all brought some of that bread to eat as we walked along our route. Obviously, me being celiac and gluten-free, I could not have that. However, we did find a Venezuelan street food stall that was fully gluten-free. So I managed to have this cornflour stroke cheese concoction, which I must say I thoroughly enjoyed. So I ate that and they ate the bread as we headed towards the river on the south bank to continue with our tour. As it turned out, the girl had been studying some Shakespeare in school and was soon to be involved in a production of one of his plays. Therefore, very handily, near Borough Market and right on the Thames on the South Bank where we were heading, we of course walked past Shakespeare's Globe Theatre. So she got some pictures of that from the outside, and Linda and I told her about our experiences of going to that theatre, the outside replica, and to the Wanamaker Theatre that is inside that location. From there, we just walked along the South Bank. As ever, there was lots going on. We spotted the celebrity chef Michael Roux Jr. doing some filming on one of the sandbanks on the Thames. I missed him myself, but apparently we walked straight past Gok Wan. Although if I had seen him, I would have said hello. I did interview him many years ago now when he was still making How to Look Good Naked. It was a phone interview, and if I remember rightly, at the point he was talking to me, he'd just taken a quick break from fitting one of the people on the show with a new bra. We stopped for a quick refreshment break outside the Tate Gallery, and then I really enjoyed walking along the next stretch of our tour, continuing along the South Bank. The first thing we got to see was the London Eye, obviously from quite a way away at first, and then you walk closer and closer and closer to it until you're right underneath it. She loved that. The look on her face was great. And then, of course, as we walked a bit further, she spotted the Houses of Parliament and Big Ben, which is such an iconic thing in London. And remember, this was the first time she'd seen it in person. She'd heard about it. She'd seen it, of course, on the TV. Now she could see this building in all its glory. And yes, she wanted to take lots of photos of it. So we walked towards that and walked along Westminster Bridge, just by Big Ben and the Houses of Parliament. And then we thought we'd head to Horse Guards Parade, mainly because it's a great opportunity to get a photo with a horse and a soldier in uniform. To get from where we were, we did have to walk more or less straight past Downing Street. As ever, I guess at the moment, that looked pretty busy. There were lots of people milling about there. Horse Guards Parade was exactly as we expected it to be, and we did make sure we got the picture with my mate's daughter and the horse and the soldier. So we did walk through Horse Guards Parade and onto the Mall, so we could see Buckingham Palace at least from a distance. Sadly, we were on quite a tight schedule to get everything in that we definitely wanted and needed to do. We headed up to Trafalgar Square because that was another thing on her list. She definitely wanted to see Nelson's Column. It brought back childhood memories, actually, of the first time I went to Trafalgar Square, and just the sheer height, size and magnificence of Nelson's Column. Plus, I do remember, I think, as a kid, climbing on those lions at the foot of it. I think lots of people who grew up in and around London or came there for a day probably gave that a try. Although they seem higher now than I remember. Either they've been raised or I'm more wary and less fearless than I once was as a 7 or 8 year old. We were having a great day and time was flying by. There was another particular place that my mate's daughter really wanted to visit while she was there, partly possibly because her mum took her brother there when he came down to London for the first time several years ago. I think he'd told her about it. Her friends had maybe mentioned it to her. She was very aware of a certain toy shop called Hamleys, so she wanted to go and have a look round there. All of us walked in there, me, Linda, my mate and his wife, and of course their daughter. It was quite busy, and it was a very warm day, and it was very hot in there. And we kind of figured there was no point all of us going round the toy shop together. So the ladies decided to go and get a little bit of fresh air and get themselves a drink around the corner. And me and Steve decided to stay and take his daughter round the toy shop. I will be honest, it's the first time I've ever been in there. I've walked past it countless times. It always looks busy. And when you're actually inside, no surprise, it is very, very busy. But it has so much stuff in there. We were in there for about an hour, and at that point, we'd probably only got to the second floor. Now, fair play to my mate. His daughter clearly has been brought up very well. She obviously wanted some toys, wanted something to take back from the shop, but she was very aware of pricing and how much things were worth, and the fact that she couldn't have anything too expensive. That was without having to be told that explicitly on the day. She kind of just knew that was the case. And there was a couple of times where she picked one thing up that she decided she'd wanted, and then later on she saw something else. She knew she wouldn't be allowed more than a couple of things, so she knew if she wanted something else she had to put the previous thing back, which she did without complaint and without moaning whatsoever. There was one point while we were there, and bearing in mind it's just me and my mate, there's no mum to oversee this particular scenario, but they are offering the chance to curl and colour a bit of the kids' hair just for a bit of fun. And this girl who was doing that approached my mate's daughter and asked her if she'd like to have it done. She just went a bit silent. It looked like she did, but obviously needed approval from her dad. So he left the decision up to her. So not only did she get her hair curled, she also got some pink bits put in it, which I was a bit worried, concerned how her mother might react when we met up with them later, but it was all fine. And it turned out that this colour literally brushed out very, very easily, so she didn't have to explain anything to her teachers on the Monday, fortunately. I must confess, I really did enjoy looking around the large Star Wars section, and there was lots of things in that toy shop I quite fancied myself. My mate was quite taken by the fact that you could get a Scale Electrics Del Trotter three-wheeler van and also Knight Rider in Scale Electrics form. He does have a Scale Electrics track, and I'm pretty sure he came closer than he should have to buying those for himself. I felt bad, but because we were on a bit of a schedule and we were in the shop longer than I anticipated, I had to kind of hurry my mate along a bit to pull us around the shop a little bit faster. And even doing that, we only managed 4 out of the 5 floors, and we were in that shop for an hour and a half. In the end, I think my mate got off relatively lightly. All he bought his daughter was a little toy she wanted, a replica from one of the characters she likes from a cartoon, and some little cool toy planes, a bit like the polystyrene ones I used to get as a kid, but just a bit cooler, and they flew a lot better. So I think everybody did okay out of that. We left Hamleys and managed to find the ladies who were around the corner outside having a drink at a pub. We collected them, and by now time was getting on, so we did need to grab a bite to eat and then head off to the theatre. Although Linda did make sure we built in some time for this. I don't know when these arrived, and I must have kind of missed the report when they appeared, but in Leicester Square now, there are an array of film characters dotted around the central part. So as we took the girl to Leicester Square for the very first time, Linda said, well, we've got to get photos for her with these various film stars. So she did. She ticked off Indiana Jones, Harry Potter, Mr. Bean's there, and Paddington. Now, Mr. Bean and Paddington, their statues are on benches so you can sit next to them. She's got a great picture of her sitting next to Mr. Bean where it just looks like they're staring at each other. It's brilliant. And a lovely, such a cute photo of her sitting next to Paddington. She's a massive Paddington Bear fan. In fact, so she could take photos on the day because she was so excited about her first trip to London, my mates managed to find an old mobile phone that she could use to take photos. So they set it up just so it had a memory card on there so she could just take all the photos herself. And she took absolutely loads and seemed to be loving it. Next stop was to grab some pre-theatre food. So we went to one of my celiac accredited easy to eat for me places, which happened to be Pizza Express, although there was a bit of a queue when we were on our way in and time was getting tight. I was getting a bit concerned because we hadn't booked, but happily they did manage to, after about a 5-minute wait, sit us straight away, and we managed to get the food eaten and the bill paid in time to get to the show. Now, it was going to be my mate's daughter's very first London West End show and experience, so I wanted to make it a good one. Obviously, it had to be child-friendly and fun, and a story she was aware of. As it happened, it was something that I'd been wanting to see for a long time myself anyway. I managed to get us tickets to go and see Back to the Future at the Adelphi Theatre. Now, I did like the original movie in the 80s a lot. It's one of those films that I've actually watched more than once, and that's a very small elite club that fit into that group. So we got there, grabbed some drinks, found our seats, and then just sat down, not knowing exactly what to expect. As ever, when I go to a show, I don't like to read up about it too much in advance. Obviously, I'd seen the film, so I knew the basic story, but I wondered what they'd do to it on stage. And they did make a few slight tweaks to the story, a few little plot alterations just to make it work better on stage, and also bring it up a little bit to modern times, because obviously, let's not forget, the film was originally made in the 80s. And I must say, without giving too much away, the special effects with the DeLorean are absolutely amazing, and they kind of get better and more amazing as the play goes on. They've obviously added a few more songs to make it flow better as a musical, but it all works. And of course, it does contain the songs you'd expect, like Johnny Be Good and The Power of Love, for example. I thought the cast were fantastic, thoroughly enjoyed the show. I would recommend going to see it. Its run in the West End has been extended recently. It is brilliant, although there was a bit of an error in the interval. Steve and I went off to get some ice cream, and we got an ice cream each. And just as I was about to return to my seat, I thought, Linda normally has a wine at the interval. Shall I get her a wine? I was kind of umming and ahhing, shall I, shan't I, whatever. And in the end, bearing in mind Steve had been up there with me and we'd ordered an ice cream each, I don't know if it looked like we were a couple together or whatever, but I went back and I thought I'd ordered one glass of wine for Linda. I wasn't totally paying attention because I just thought I'd ordered the one wine, wasn't really looking. I was just getting ready to pay. And it came up as being £24. And I suddenly thought, that's a lot for one glass of wine. But, you know, theatre mode, London, not wanting to appear cheap, I just tapped the card. And it was at that point I realised I'd actually bought 2 glasses of wine. I'm sure I ordered one. I guess maybe they saw 2 people standing there and thought we wanted one each. Neither Steve or myself were drinking, so we had to carry the ice cream and the 2 glasses of wine back to Linda, and I had to explain what I did and see if she fancied having the 2 glasses of wine. Fair play to her, she very much took one for the team and did have them both in the end, although obviously I had to hold one for her till at least she'd finished the first one. The only other byproduct of watching that show was, because the person who played Dr. Brown was so good and so memorable, I just found myself saying, "Great Scott!" for about the next week. But it's worth it. And the most important thing is, the girl absolutely loved her first experience of a West End show, which made me so happy and actually made me enjoy the whole experience even more. The only slight downside of the day, I suppose, was the train home. We got a bit lucky in that we managed to get there early enough that we got some seats, but my, that was packed out. And why is it on a late train home, most people are kind of civilised, keep themselves to themselves, just chat in their little groups? You always get one or two who want to shout the place down and be really loud and really annoying. Now, this may make me seem like a bit of a mean person, but the lady in question who was doing this on this occasion, and she was just talking louder than she needed to, singing for no reason. As it turned out, she thought the train was stopping somewhere that it wasn't, so she had to go further down the line than she was expecting. Now, I'm not saying when she found this out and her reaction, I did not smile a little bit and maybe think it was a little bit of karma for the way she was behaving, possibly, or if she paid more attention to what train she was getting in the first place, she may have got to the right station first time. Anyway, we all got home and had a fantastic day out in London. It was just so much more fun seeing it through a child's eyes for the first time. As I said, it brought back memories of the first time I went to London and seeing all those sights for the first time myself. So needless to say, we did have a bit of a lie-in after our epic day walking around London. I think we topped about 25,000 steps, so we did okay on that front, and obviously we tired everyone out. In the morning, before Steve and his family left, his daughter was keen to play some games. Now, I'm a big kid. I like playing games. Initially, we opted for a game of Scrabble, and I thought it was just going to be me playing her. Now, I'd have gone easy on her, possibly, and made sure I just about won, maybe by a few points. As it turned out, when we got the Scrabble board out, she got her dad to sit next to her and help her. Also, while we were playing, Linda chipped in with a few words and her mum helped her as well. So suddenly, this game of Scrabble is now 3 against 1. Which, if I'm honest, I did think maybe was a little bit unfair. And I did have a bit of bad luck with the tiles. Yeah, a bad workman always blames his tools. Basically what I'm saying is I got absolutely thrashed. But I think it's fair to say the young girl playing me did have a lot of help. As it turned out, though, I managed to score exactly 88 points, which I claimed I was trying to achieve as a tribute, as a nod to the musical Back to the Future we'd seen the night before. Because to go back or forward in time in that DeLorean, you do need to hit 88 miles an hour, of course. We followed up Scrabble by playing a game of Ludo, which the little girl won again. She was really having such a lucky day. I should have taken her to a casino and got her to play blackjack for me or something. All too soon it was time for Steve and his family to head back, but it was a fantastic weekend, and obviously we didn't get to see everything in London we'd like to, or show her all the sights and the attractions. So hopefully she'll come back and we'll do another London trip very similar and have another great day out. Another thing I managed to organise recently was a few drinks with a former colleague of mine. We used to work together at the radio station Mix 96. He's now working for Absolute Country, which is a fantastic country station and a station I love listening to myself. So it was brilliant to catch up with him. We had a chat, filled each other in on things we'd missed, because we'd not actually seen each other for quite a few years, as it turned out in the end. And it was a very rare occasion when I actually went out in London after work, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Only for an hour or so, which I find nowadays is about right. Finish work, an hour and a half or so, chatting, having a few drinks, get home, have some food, get to sleep. I've definitely changed since I was in my 20s and 30s, I think. Value sleep a lot more now, seemingly. Last weekend, I went round my girlfriend's place because she had organised a games night for a few of her cousins and their other halves. And of course, that means she had to put on a big spread, because you have to feed people when they come over to your house. She has recently started cooking quite a bit of Caribbean food. Her dad is from Trinidad, so she's always had that sort of food around her. She prepared this amazing chicken Caribbean themed curry. It tasted absolutely amazing, and there was so much of it. And she did make me a gluten-free Victoria sponge cake, which I did have to share with everybody else, which I was fine with. You know, I'm very nice like that. It's not a problem. The games we played in the end was What's My Meme, which is kind of like Cards Against Humanity, if you've ever played that, but with memes, in that you get a meme and you each have to, from your selection of cards, pick the caption that you think best fits that. I thoroughly enjoyed that game, and as it happened, I won that game. However, the next game we played was a game called Scrawl, which is kind of similar in that how it works is you get given a phrase, you then have to draw that phrase, then you pass it round to the person on your left. They have to look at your picture and then write down what they think the phrase is. They pass it to the next one. They draw a picture of that phrase, and it kind of goes round. So it's kind of like picture form Chinese whispers in a way. The only problem is I am such a bad artist. I am terrible at drawing. I don't think anybody came close to recognising anything I drew the entire time we were playing that game. Which, needless to say, means I lost that completely. And we seemed to play that forever. We did have a big stack of games to play, but somehow we only got round to playing 2 in the end. Just too much talking and having fun. I found a game that I'd forgotten I'd even bought to bring over, although we didn't get round to playing it in the end. I think you can play it a lot more simply. It was the Who Am I game, which is very simple. It's just a box with people's names on, and then you pick one, hold it up to your forehead so you can't see it but everybody else can, and then you ask yes or no questions to try and work out who it is. The day after the games night, just for a laugh, I thought I'd give it a try with Linda, thinking I'd probably guess who's on my head in about 30 seconds because I just thought I'd be brilliant at it. It took me a good 5 or 6 minutes to guess Julia Roberts in the end, but I was very delighted when I got there. It's fair to say Tottenham Hotspur are still somehow doing okay. We went into the international break being top of the league. However, we are going to be the last ones to play this weekend, so we'll see how it goes. Even though we're that high in the league, I honestly don't believe Tottenham are going to be involved in any title fight, but it's just great at the moment. We're playing good attacking football. We're having a go at teams. The squad are together, the fans are together, we're just having fun. When you go to a game at Spurs at the moment, the atmosphere is great, everybody's having a good time. Win, lose or draw at the moment, we're having a party. But if the winning continues, the parties are obviously a bit bigger. Tricky one at home to Fulham on Monday night, but I was at the away game when we lost in the Carabao Cup, and I kind of feel like we owe them one a bit for that, so we'll see what happens. As a Spurs fan at the moment, I'm thoroughly happy. Our manager, Ange Postecoglou, has now won the Manager of the Month award 2 months running. Player of the Month went to Heung-min Son this month. Last month, it went to James Maddison, which means we've also had the Premier League Player of the Month and the Premier League Manager of the Month all season so far. Pretty impressive, right? As a fully paid up celiac and someone who's had asthma since the age of 7, I very much do qualify for any vaccinations that are going and are available. As it happens, in the last week, I managed to sort out my flu jab and my COVID jab as well. So I've got those in. I've been having the flu jab for pretty much as long as I can remember, and I will always take it if offered. There's nothing worse than the really bad flu, and I remember as a kid, every time I got a cold or a flu, went straight to my chest, and I had an absolutely terrible time. So anything that can stop that happening, I'm on board with. I know at the moment COVID cases do seem to be rising again slightly, and it does seem there are potentially some nasty strains around. So as soon as I was offered the jab, for me personally, it was a no-brainer. I just consider it just an add-on extra to the flu jab I always have every year anyway. So I'm kind of ready for the autumn in that respect, although not the weather. I am very much someone who likes it hot and likes it warm. I'm not a fan of the cold weather. My scarf and hat have now officially come out, and they will be with me, I reckon, till at least April next year, keeping me warm. Just the usual reminder that you can hear my radio show between 2 and 4 Saturday afternoons on radio9springs.com. That is it for this week. Thanks for listening. Look after yourselves and each other. Take care, and I'll speak to you again soon. Bye-bye.